Hello, Namaskar. You're with Strategic Dialogue by USI on National Defense and Geopolitics. I'm Priti Prakash and I have with me Major General Dr. AK Bardalai as our distinguished guest, with whom we will be speaking on UN peacekeeping. Welcome, General Bardalai.
Thank you.
These are intense times. Two major wars are being witnessed by the world. Russia-Ukraine conflict is going on for more than 2 years, and Israel-Gaza tension is in its 10th month. Besides, be it the African continent or the Koreas or the South China Sea, we are living in uncertain and volatile times. Who does the world look at today? The UN is supposed to be the agency for solving complex issues of the world. But is it able to do its job? Countries have been asking for reforms in the UN. Not just are they needed in the United Nations Security Council too. Major General Dr. AK Bardalai is a veteran officer of the Indian Army. Having commanded an infantry division and overseen many overseas assignments, he was commandant of the Indian military training team in Bhutan. He served in Angola as the UN military observer and was the deputy head of the mission of the UN interim force in Lebanon. He has a doctorate in UN peacekeeping from Netherlands and was a member of the study team of UN Truce Supervision Organization. Presently, he is engaged in activities related to UN peacekeeping. Let me begin by asking you, General Bardalai. In the above context, when there are wars being fought in the Middle East between Israel and Gaza, and in Europe between Russia and Ukraine, the inability of UN to prevent them is just being amplified. Would you call it a paralysis of the United Nations Security Council? Also, do you think that the United Security Council been bigger and had there been no veto, would it have helped prevent and see a quicker solution to these major conflicts? And if I could add, if you could throw light on the contributing factors of this perceived failure.
Thank you so much. To begin with, yes, despite its long history, United Nations has taken a beating now. And currently, UN in general and even peacekeeping in specific are facing several fundamental challenges. Like you have stated, not being able to prevent or bring an end to both Ukraine and Gaza wars actually has undermined the United Nations role as an impartial peace broker. Now, you raised the question about paralysis. Yes, I think there was the case of example of United Nations Security Council paralysis even during Gaza war, when Egyptian President Anwar Sadat nationalized Suez Canal and 3 countries, France, UK and Israel, wanted to invade them. And it was a very difficult situation for United Nations. Nobody wanted a war because he's nationalizing the Aswan Dam, collecting revenue out of them because UK and USA refused to fund for the construction of the dam anymore. It had economic implications. But because of the initiative of then Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld, who later got the Nobel Peace Prize, he could change it. So I would say that it is not the first time that UN Security Council has been paralyzed. It was paralyzed then also, but how do you get out of this is very important. A lot of dynamics. Now, what happens why this question is come up mostly because it's inability to prevent or bring an end to Ukraine and Gaza war. Now, the way the UN is structured or the procedures of the Security Council veto system, that whenever a P5 member is either directly involved or party to the conflict indirectly, obviously Security Council resolution will never be approved. Is the case between Russia and Ukraine. And when a P5 country is indirectly supporting another country which is involved with the country, also Security Council resolution will never be approved. The question of Gaza. Because today, despite about more than 40,000 people have been killed in Gaza. Today the bombing continues despite the effort from the international community. So that's because they have the support, still have the support from at least from USA, the war continues. So that is one part. So one is that, first part is that can you table the Security Council resolution and get it approved? It is very difficult. But even if you can get a Security Council resolution approved, how do you enforce it? Come back to the Gaza, after so many resolutions, finally they could approve a resolution, but USA abstained from it. What is the meaning of abstention? That means you take care of things. I am not interested, but I can continue to give support. So question is that whether it is P5 member directly involved or a powerful countries trying to influence the outcome of the battle or continuation of the battle or want to end the battle, the war will continue. Now connected with you ask about this veto power. But yes, many countries, yes, it is a time I think that the need for reform of the Security Council. There is a requirement because procedure within the Security Council is such that within the P5 countries, firstly, the mandate or resolution when get approved, they follow the unofficial tradition known as a pen holder system. That means 3 countries primarily, USA, UK and France are the pen holders depending on the strategic interest in the conflict zone. And when they decide among 3 of them, then they circulate among the 3 countries, lot of changes take place. After they agree, then they circulate to balance of the 2 countries, Russia and China. After that, then they circulate the final draft to the balance of the 10 countries leaving any time left. So it is a compromised political product. So that is. So even if you increase, enlarge the size of the Security Council, would it help? It might help. Why it might help is that today a country like India, not party to what is going on within the Security Council. You don't even know, you can't even influence. But if you are a permanent member, at least you may be able to influence the outcome of the draft to some extent. That is one part. But second part, as long as the powerful nations do not want to help in ending the war, it will continue like that.
Okay, something interesting that you just talked about is the pen holder system. I mean, if you can tell our audience what this pen holder system
The pen holder
means.
system is, the Security Council procedures are there. When the Security Council, a draft resolution is tabled, so someone has to take the initiative to draft the resolution.
Okay.
So they are, it is called the pen holders. That means they hold the pen.
Okay.
So one of the countries, 3 countries, important resolution. Now they started slowly and slowly, delegated the responsibility to other countries depending on that not very important resolutions. Now they take the lead. For example, pen holder for, I think, Lebanon mission is France. Pen holder for, I think, there's a Congo is one of the countries. So they make the initial draft as it suits them. Then they will circulate to other 2 countries. They may have some reservation. They say, no, change it. They may change it there again. They will come to a first compromised draft. Then they will give it to other 2 countries. Then it may go through second compromise. After that, it will be circulated to 10 remaining members before finally it is tabled for voting. So this system is not likely to go away very soon. And what happened, these countries, for having the pen holders for a long time, they have the institutional memories. They can justify why they have put a certain clause because they quote with examples. And we do not have that. India doesn't have that. They have the history. It happens, it's something like, best of the legal experts. He draws example from different states, old cases, cite examples, try to influence the judges. So that is they have the institutional memory. India doesn't have. But what India can do possibly, if they can digitize all the old records, they can do that even if you are not member. But I'm sure after some time, public pressure, the pen holder system will change. But I cannot put a time on it.
Okay. Okay, moving on, General Bardalai, despite more than 7 decades in history, UN peacekeeping has come under severe criticism for its failing to protect civilians in interstate conflicts. UN missions in Mali have been forced out. Similarly, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, also they are wanting to be forced out of the country. So this raises the question of the relevance of UN peace operations. How do you view that?
It's a very relevant question, actually contemporary question you have raised. Firstly, protection of the civilian is become a priority task for United Nations. No, it became formally part of the mandate after you would have heard that infamous Rwanda genocide. And that had got the mandate, Rwanda mission, but that was almost the mission was closed. But it was the Sierra Leone mission where the mission was explicitly authorized to use force, all necessary means to use force to protect the civilians. Now, as peace operations evolved, the protection of civilian, and acronym is POC they call it, it became part of the mandate. Now what happened to the civilians, the local population, they may not be interested what is written in a mandate. To them, peacekeepers are kind of agents of peace. As far as they are concerned, whether the UN mission is mandated or not, they expect them to protect their lives. And the peacekeeping mission, more so when they are authorized now to use force, they are unable to do them, they become very angry. And local population is the barometer of success of peacekeeping operation. That is the reason the question has come up, why that their hesitation to use, because there are cases that peacekeeping contingents have hesitated to use force when they could do that. There are reasons behind it. Now, just to tell you, there could be multiple reasons, multiple reasons. Normally what happens that when you use force against armed rebel groups, most likely to be retaliated. At the ground level, that is up to the peacekeeping contingents, how they face up to that, such a threat. And that depends on the training and a mindset. That is one part, peacekeeping contingent and peacekeepers on ground. But the story is slightly different at the national level, at troop contributing countries level. Is that what happened? There's no peacekeeping force directly under command of UN headquarters. So once the mission is approved, you have to approach the member states for participation in peacekeeping operations. And they will not participate unless it suits their strategic interest. And troop contributing countries do not want their contingents to use force in the host state if it goes against their strategic interest, and more importantly, if the host state itself is complicit in crimes. The political questions, strategic, national interest, you can call it. Second question is, they are most of the troop contributing countries, I don't blame them, they don't like to carry body bags of their own peacekeepers home, because it becomes very difficult for them to justify their soldiers dying to bring peace for another country thousands of miles away from their country. So basically it is less up on ground, more of it is the troop contributing countries that they issue national caveats, restrictions. They're all undeclared. This may come in any form. They may put caution on them that don't use excessive force, don't buy casualties, or even there are instances that contingents and refuse to deploy and redeploy, even it was an operational requirement. That is where lies the problem.
So it's fringing on the moral as well as ethical as well as nationalist feelings.
Yeah, you are correct. You know, this national interest is one. It is something like broad spectrum antibiotics. If you do not have an answer for anything, you can always say it is our national interest.
Yeah.
Or nationalism. And I look at it ethics, and when ethics and values of life, they become the first victim of bureaucracy and politics, is equally applicable everywhere.
Okay. Now, regarding the criticism drawn by the UN for its failure in Africa, there are several cases of peacekeepers hesitating to use force for the protection of civilians, you know, even though the missions have been empowered to use force under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. Why is it that capable peacekeepers, who are well trained and well equipped, hesitate to use force for the protection of civilians?
Like I said, that there could be several reasons. Primary reason is that troop contributing countries, you know, who contribute troops, and to some extent the peacekeepers, but that can be changed. But the justification that is given by the troop contributing countries or the peacekeepers for not using force or for the inactions is different from the actual reason. I can cite few examples. One is that, you know, the three principles of peacekeeping, you know, it is for successful peacekeeping operation, adherence to the principles of peacekeeping is very important. Now, these peacekeeping principles were identified after the Gaza operation, 1956. They are not mentioned in UN charters. What had happened, at that point of time, Dag Hammarskjöld, under Secretary General, he thought that firstly there should be consent to solve that problem. That is the first principle, absolute consent from the parties to the conflict. That was an interstate kind of thing. Second, that no member of the P5 will participate in peacekeeping operations. Third, any other country which might have the strategic interest in that conflict area will not participate. That's why they should be neutral. Third is that force can be used, but only in self-defense. But that was in 56. That time possibly drafters or people who identified the peacekeeping principle, they possibly did not visualize the contours of the conflict, what the world will go through. So consent is no more absolute. It's become a consensus. And it comes with conditions, okay, the ambiguity. Neutrality is not applicable anymore. Now you cannot have force only from outside because you need now more capable and trained troops that may not be available. Third is use of force. Use of force also has, concept of force is developed over a period of time. So as the definitions are slightly become ambiguous, the creating some kind of ambiguity in the interpretation of the peacekeeping principles. And member states make use of this ambiguity to justify their action. Okay, that is one. Second is that interpretation of the mandate. Wording of the mandate can be very confusing. I will take the example of Mali. It was Chapter 7 mission and to protect civilians. And Mali, you know, threat was from the jihadi terrorists from the north. Now, the mandate also used wording like reaffirming the principles of peacekeeping, including consent, impartiality, and use of force only in self-defense. It goes on to use words like terrorism can be addressed only by sustained and comprehensive effort. Now, the mission has been tasked under Chapter 7 to use force. You have to use force against terrorists. And you expect them to adhere to the principle that themselves become ambiguous. In fact, I have written about this ambiguity in peacekeeping principle, a long article I have written. And already confusing, then you use words like that addressing this problem of jihadi or terrorist threat by comprehensive and sustained approach, that become more confusing than the contrast or conflict between the chapter 7 task and adherence to the principle. So there's a confusion always. Then inadequate resources. You know, the peacekeepers, if they want to act or they have to protect civilians, they should be able to, the capability must be there. But it is always shortcomings, you know, always limited because of the terrain conditions, unit contingent must be under rotation. There are many such examples, you know. Then the confusion between the POC and R2P. R2P is the responsibility to protect.
Okay.
You know, that was a policy, not. You see, protection of civilian is based on international law.
Okay.
That's why it is legal. So it provides the legal support to the peacekeepers to use force. That is one. But the responsibility to protect is a political policy. But both are grounded on the need to protect civilians. That means objective is same. So obviously there will be similarities, there will be differences with complex relationship. And what happens, again, some of the countries, mostly these countries from the global south who participate with maximum troops, they suspect the Western nations to misuse when you link POC with R2P, because you know what had happened if you remember in Libya, the only once the responsibility to protect was invoked, initially it was intended to be, seemingly that it was for protecting the civilians, but actually objective was regime change. So there are many confusions like that, you know. I mean, mandate interpretation, I can go on like that. I think it will be too long a story.
A lot of examples there are.
There are many more examples. So I think we'll leave it at that.
Okay. Okay, so returning to Ukraine and Gaza war, suppose in case a hypothetical situation which we all hope it comes to, that a ceasefire is declared. So whenever it is, and if it is, what role do you see of the UN peacekeeping in supervising the ceasefire agreements? And an additional part to it is that how do you see the future role of, you know, UN peacekeeping when, as you said, there are so many factors that depend on a peacekeeping force being there on ground, then the politics of it, then the strategic part of it, and the people approach to it. So how do you see all this, you know?
You see, Ukraine and Gaza war are a kind of interstate conflict. I will say Gaza also interstate conflict, you know. They're quite different. And now what happens is that, like I said, that UN is what the member states make out of it. Yes, I do not know when the ceasefire takes place. Hopefully that sometime the ceasefire will take place. If not complete cessation of the hostilities, which is not likely to take place, I think conflict resolution is out of the question nowadays. It is basically conflict management. So if that happens, you may need a neutral or some kind of neutral force to supervise the ceasefire organizations. You know, the truce, I would say. It can be by anyone. It can be by civilian peacekeepers. It can be by political mission. Could be anyone, I would say. But point is that who will participate? You know, if you suppose now ask the question of UN peacekeeping, could be UN peacekeeping also, then the questions have to be asked. Will UN peacekeeping will be able to supervise? And what does it mean, supervision? When you supervise that kind of agreement, there could be violation of ceasefire agreement. There could be reoccurrences of violence. And I don't think any country would like to get inside with the two countries like Russia and Ukraine fighting, or between Hamas and Israelis. So it is difficult. I don't think member states will contribute troops that way. It may. Second thing, that they should be acceptable to those countries, parties to the conflict. Both Russia, Ukraine. This idea was mooted earlier, by the way, about Ukraine, the peacekeeping is another option.
Okay.
But whether it will work out, a lot of factors have to be gone into. Then anyone who is supervising the ceasefire agreement, obviously they would like to be armed. They call it armed means for self-defense. So you have to be stronger than the two other parties. Would you find a stronger peacekeeping force who can enforce the ceasefire agreement on both Israel, Hamas and Russia and Ukraine? Not likely. USA is not going to participate. You know what had happened in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Big powers will not participate. I don't think. But yes, if they agree, what I feel is that if at all some kind of role, there could be kind of observers mission, unarmed observers mission. Unarmed observers mission, they do not pose a threat to the parties to the conflict. There could be combination of civilian and unarmed observers mission. But it is very too early to answer that questions. I think people have to
Wait and watch.
Wait and watch.
Yeah.
But I will not rule out any role. But I feel if at all it takes place, it will be light-footed, and I feel it will be kind of unarmed observers missions. Like we have got unarmed observers mission in Golan Heights. At the UNSO, actually, the part of the Golan Heights, they are actually there to supervise the agreements between Israel and other countries. So
Okay.
I look at it that way.
So we do hope, that peace comes soon to the warring parties, whether it be Russia, Ukraine or Israel-Gaza, because war at the end of it is only about bloodshed and lot of damage to the development of the country itself, and people suffer after all at the end of the day. So thank you so much, Dr. Major General Bardalai, for talking to us, and it's been a pleasure having you on our show.
It's my pleasure as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.